thing, but you couldn't take your eyes off the saxophone player, whose name was Hank Crawford. And that's the moment you decided to be a saxophonist, is this right?
Well, it goes a little farther back than that, but I was very sick as a kid. I had polio when I was a kid, and I was in an iron lung. Anybody know what an iron lung is? Those big giant machines. Well, and I was, when I got out, I was in an iron lung for about a year, and I was paralyzed from the neck down for about a year after that. So from 3 to 5, I was kind of messed up. How I got movement again was my mother took me into the ocean down in Florida, west coast of Florida, I'm trying to think, St. Petersburg, and kind of gradually got me back so I was walking relatively, still can't dance very well.
Dave Sanborn can shake it down. Wait, we're gonna make sure we demonstrate that later.
I dance in the But so growing up, I listened to the radio a lot at night, with all the lights off, and it was like this great music theater for me. And all the rock and roll at the time, and was saxophone players that was a solo instrument of rock and roll with, Fats Domino and all these great people, Little Richard, and so growing up, and plus they were playing jazz on the radio too, and it was like this great world that I kind of wanted to be in. So I was already predisposed to the saxophone, and my father took me to a series of basketball games in St. Louis Hawks. That's how long ago that was. The basketball team was the St. Louis Hawks, and after the game for 1 year, they had a concert series. So they had Count Basie, Stan Kenton, Duke Ellington, and Ray Charles was one of them. And in those days, Ray would spend about 45 minutes getting ready backstage before,
That's what they call it, getting ready?
Yeah, that's what they call it. Gotta make sure you're ready.
Wait, I'm not ready yet.
I learned about that later. But, so the band would play, and on this particular night, the band was playing particularly long. And I was at the other end of the Kiel Auditorium, and Hank Crawford was playing this, again, really slow ballad, which Ray was known for, also playing slow ballads, the same page as Sarah. And he's playing this really slow ballad. And the sound system went off. And I could hear the band kind of, but I could hear Hank just as clear as a bell, just his sound cut through, and I got, that's unbelievable, that's like magic. And coincidentally, right at that time, the doctors recommended to my parents that I play a wind instrument for therapy. So my father asked me, so what, you want to play a wind instrument? I said, yeah, saxophone. So saxophone was kind of my salvation in a way. I had no idea that it was something I was going to do for a living. And the odd thing is, it's still, I don't know, it's kind of, this is going to sound weird to say, but it's kind of almost secondary to why I play. It is a job, yeah, in one sense, but I have to do this, So even when I sound shitty, even when I sound bad, even when the show's bad, it's still a great day. You know what I mean? Because I'm playing my instrument. I don't want to get too metaphysical about this, but it's my connection to some kind of spiritual, reality that is something more than this. It's that spiritual side that encompasses all of this, but I don't know, it just kind of...
Well, I'll tell you, anybody who knows Dave, and I've known Dave since I was 18, 19 years old, there's a connection between him and that saxophone that's a little freaky.
Uncomfortable.
A little uncomfortable. I remember we were doing an album.
You don't have to break all that stuff out.
No, we won't break it out.
Don't unpack that.
I'll just tell one story, which is, we were doing an album. It's
Tell me
called,
that name.
the album was called Close Up. And we were working on this album, and the week before the album began, David figured he'd be proactive and take his saxophone to the sax repair guy to have the guy just look over the sax and make sure everything was okay, which I admired. He was thinking ahead, right? Anyway, he got the sax back, and it didn't sound right to him. And it started an episode of my life, okay, as the producer, okay, that I would not like to have to revisit, okay? Because this guy was not happy, okay? He said, "Do you hear the difference in my horn?" I said, "It sounds like loud David Sanborn to me." I don't hear a difference. Man, there's a difference. Something's wrong, man. Something's wrong. So we go, I think the record took maybe 4 months to do. And Dave, I remember, Yamaha saxophone got wind that Dave was, something had happened to his horn. This was their opportunity to get David Sanborn as a Yamaha artist. So they sent 5 Japanese dudes in suits to the studio with like 8 shiny new Yamaha saxophones, right? And I'm in the control room working on something we recorded the day before, but I can see them in the studio, and they all have suits and they have the pads, Bob, where they're writing the information that Dave gives, and Dave wants to, Dave doesn't play softly, right? So Dave picks up the one and he goes, and the Japanese suits are going like this. And they're writing their notes. So I'm cracking up because I go, they're wasting their time. Then, wait, Dave, tell me if you remember this. 2 months later, during the holidays, the Christmas holidays, he hears that there's another saxophone the same make as his original saxophone in Japan. And he flies to Japan to try to convince the guy to sell it to him, right? Do you remember this?
Yes.
All right, I'll cut. I'm making him uncomfortable, so. The end of the story is the day we finished the album, the day we turned the album into the record company, so it's all done. He goes, "Marcus, I figured out what the problem was," right? I said, "What was it?" He said, "He changed my thumb rest, which is a little piece of metal that your thumb holds the sax. They changed it from metal to plastic. And it made all the difference, man, And I'm going, okay, he's crazy. But for him, and if you talk to any saxophone player there, I'm looking for support from the other saxophone players, like, yeah, he's crazy. No, they go, no, man, that's true, man. That's true.